Okay, I think we can probably get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Georgiana Allwell, the Executive Director of IFMA Boston. On behalf of the Board of Directors, committee chairs, and volunteers who are orchestrating today's program, I'd like to thank you for joining us. If you are a regular at our Thought Leaders programming, welcome back. If this is your first event, we are pleased you could join us. These programs provide our FM members an opportunity for peer networking, information sharing, and finding best practices. If you get to the end of today's discussion and feel inspired to see more programming like this, we welcome you to join our think tank committee. This is a group of facility managers that meet for 30 minutes virtually each month to brainstorm and conceive of the chapter's programming, including webinars, thought leaders, tours, programs, white papers, and the podcast to ensure they all meet the needs of you, our facility manager members. Just connect with me after the program if you're interested. And now I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Actually, we believe there'll be one speaker today from Cushman & Wakefield. Joining us is Rachel Shifton, Lead Fitwell Ambassador, Bream USA In-Use Assessor, and Reset Air AP. She is the Managing Director of Sustainability Services for Cushman & Wakefield. She joined Cushman & Wakefield in 2018 and became a Managing Director in 2022. As the lead for the Americas Asset Services ESG team, she oversees a team that provides holistic ESG consulting, project management solutions to clients and their commercial real estate assets. I hope I'm reading that all correctly, Rachel. Including certifications, asset optimization, advisory, and reporting. She also assists C&W managed properties in developing and pursuing ESG strategies for their assets and occupants. Her notable projects include Independence Wharf here in Boston, as well as 250 Park in New York. Both are LEED Gold. So now I'm going to turn it over to you, Rachel. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you all for having me. I'm going to share my screen, so give me a moment to figure this out for a second. And I would like, hopefully, since we've got, a smaller, more intimate group here, to be as interactive as possible. So feel free, if you've got questions, don't worry. There are some prompts that I do have for everyone to get the audience more engaged. But feel free throughout to ask questions. One of the biggest things, I'll make sure I'll define what ESG is for those of you who have not heard of it. I think one of the biggest takeaways is from this presentation is, what does ESG mean? What are some of the ways in which you can be more prepared or manage your property facility with that ESG lens? And then what are some things coming down the pipeline in Boston specifically? So thank you for having us. Like Gio said, my colleague was going to join. She actually is speaking at another event, which she got called in early for just a prep. So Rachel Shifton, I lead our sustainability team within Cushman Wakefield, and really we support any of our managed properties or facilities in anything from that client perspective or ownership and from that sustainability lens. So first thing, going to jump in, what in the world is this acronym ESG? What's going on with the ESG? And I would say, if you've heard of sustainability, they kind of go hand in hand. What is going on? What does the sustainability landscape look like, especially in terms of the regulatory environment? I'll talk high level national, but also bring it down more regional to Boston. And then how do we have that successful partnership between both the landlord, the ownership side, and then us as facility property managers or with our occupiers and tenants. So really just a poll here. You probably, I think, all have access to the chat, or we could just not do chat. And if you want to come off mute, and really, who's in the room? Do we have property owners, tenants, residents, occupiers, third-party management, or other? And since it's a smaller group, other, what exactly, what was your role? So feel free. We've got some chat too. Perfect. So we've got third-party management, tenant, owner.
Other.
And
Perfect.
I see an owner, municipal, which I believe is one of the towns, in Massachusetts.
Perfect. Cool. Well, it looks like we've got a good variety here. So we've got some more tenants and owners, owner occupier. Great. Perfect. And again, feel free, facility service providers or third-party management. Great. Again, let's use this chat, or feel free to come off mute. Don't want this to be me just speaking to you all. So what is ESG? So ESG does stand for environmental, social, and governance. So it's really how we measure the sustainability of a company, an organization, a firm. We can even do it from a building level as well. So if we want to drive it down to that building level, it's how do we at the building interact and impact the environment? So that could be anything from your GHG emissions to your energy, to your water, to your waste. From the S standpoint, it's how does our building, how does our organization impact and work with its stakeholders, mainly more so your tenants, your occupiers, and the communities around which your building resides or sits. That could be, health and safety within the building, your community impact. What are you doing from that philanthropic lens, engaging with those within the community, employee relations, DEI, etc. And then G is that how do we govern ourselves? And really, I say G is what dictates both the environmental and the social. So you've got compliance, HR, whomever that sets the policies. Okay, this is what we're going to do, or this is what we strive to accomplish. And then that really leads the charge for the environmental and social aspects. Okay, perfect. So really the ESG landscape, there are a lot of different things that are driving, and you'll probably, I'm going to say, hear me use ESG and sustainability interchangeably throughout this presentation. So really in my line of business, it all means the same. It varies region to region. So really what is driving this landscape? So I would say the biggest things we really talk about or see is one, regulatory. You're seeing, and we're going to talk about that when we show the different, building performance standards that are coming out across the country. BERDO in Boston is a great example of the regulatory environment changing and the risks that are going to be associated with that from a financial standpoint. Or compliance. Then also you've got the SEC just did a ruling last Thursday in which larger accelerated publicly traded firms are going to have to start reporting on their financial risk when it comes to physical climate risk. And also they're going to have to report on scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. Again, this probably doesn't start, or this isn't starting until fiscal year 2025, but these are just things that are coming down the pipeline. Also, as you probably know, especially those who are in third-party management, you've got a lot of occupiers or tenants who are driving this. So they may have made public commitments, and so they're making sure that the partnership with the building that they're in or the employees in this space, they're making sure that they're mitigating any risk and have that partnership between the owner side. So they may have their own values and that they want to make sure there's that like a split incentive between both the third-party management and then the occupiers. Some others is external. Investors may be asking for this as well. So if you're looking for any type of, as an owner, foreign capital, a lot of investors are now in their due diligence or asking to make sure that companies, buildings, funds are also incorporating sustainability in their initiatives. So here really the different trends emerging. One, that climate and resiliency risk, things such as, what does it look like from maybe Boston, a flood, or other areas, fire. So we're looking more at the physical risk and how that impacts the financial risk of a company and what we're doing to safeguard against those. Also, carbon emissions. Again, we're seeing different municipalities across the country who have signed on to have some type of carbon emissions limit. And so that then falls down onto us as building owners and managers and those who are in the spaces to make sure that we're reducing our energy consumption on site. And then I think one of the outcomes of COVID is that people are more aware of the spaces in which they spend their time. And I think one of the stats is about 90% of our time is spent indoors. And so we're seeing a lot of occupants now making sure that those are good for their health and well-being as well. So no matter if you're a owner or an occupier, really there's that shared value. And again, the investors are seeing more pressure from a sustainability lens, whether it's banks, whether it's insurance, pension funds, high value investors are asking now for ways in which an owner may be reducing their GHG emissions, reducing other things like waste and water. Again, all of that leads into lowering your operating costs. And then from the occupier side, again, they're seeing that pressure more internally from the employees, the board, suppliers, or even customers. As I would say, generations are changing. We're seeing like the millennial generation and even the younger generation being a more values-driven generation. And so they want to align the products or the companies that they are associating with those who also have their same kind of sustainability outlook on life. So again, very same, it goes back to achieving the shared goal is achieving those sustainability goals and then improving human value. Diving a little deeper, some of the investor ESG. So again, and trends we're seeing, more and more investors are considering ESG issues as part of their investment approach, whether it's during an acquisition or that due diligence part, or during the operations of the build. Strategy there is something called GRESB. It's the global real estate benchmarking assessment, and a lot of investors report to GRESB, and GRESB looks at your performance and then your leadership in sustainability, benchmarks you among is where investors may make some of their decisions for investment options. Again, along the same lines from the occupier standpoint, there is something called SBTI, so science-based target initiatives, and those are initiatives or commitments that companies make to decarbonize their portfolio or on their way into becoming a net zero or having net zero goals. And so you can see here just on this graph on the left-hand side, really started in around 2015, and a huge uptick from 2015 to 2021 of those companies who have made public commitments and then have gotten these approved, as that's part of the whole submission thing of net zero commitments. So again, net zero commitments are great, but you've got to get there somehow. And so that's just shows the uptick here. Any questions before, and we're going to have another poll, but any questions on that before I jump into the regulatory environment? Okay, so maybe this will be better, and feel free mute.
Rachel?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, it looked like Matt raised his hand.
Oh, excuse me. Hi, Matt.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Hey, Rachel. No, I would just ask your opinion anyway. The ESG, I've seen it kind of trending upwards the last couple of years, but I'm thinking mission, vision, and values like corporations. Are they starting to bake that in? Have you seen it? Any visibility to it? Because I've seen it in contracts, for third-party facility services. I saw some public companies starting to incorporate ESG in their mission, vision, and values at that level. So I just want to see if you've seen the same thing. I've seen it trending upwards anyway.
Yeah,
Seeing it more often.
definitely. You're just seeing more, I think, companies outwardly putting or publicly announcing, their mission or goals or what they stand for. A lot of it is also for recruitment and attraction, as people, are going into job force or looking for new companies. You've got people that want to align with companies that do make public commitments or put out there, okay, this is what we believe or stand for, or we're working on ways in which we can reduce our carbon emissions across our portfolio, or real estate assets. So we are seeing that.
It's not just the right thing to do. They're trying to recruit people, but also tenants too. Right? Trying to get landlords are trying to get tenants in for advertising.
I agree. I think it's it's risk mitigation. It has financial impact, but it also can be a good marketing tool.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so regulatory impact. Here's our second poll, and feel free, you can come off mute or you can put it in the chat. I'm sure most of you in the Boston area have heard of BERDO. If not, you are going to learn a little bit more about it in the next couple of minutes, but look at these 4 options and feel free to put in where you stand. Same, Ashley.
It's always quite a bit between federal regulations, state regulations, and then whatever town/city regulations are also.
Tony. I love it. Okay, so as you all probably know, and I'm gonna just talk high level, if you need me to go any more detail or if you know stuff, again, feel free to jump in. I would say we really stand by, and I would say your best resource, and towards the end of this, I've got like a slide for additional resources, and this is linked, but the IMT, the Institute for Market Transformation, stays up to date on any city, state, municipality that is putting out benchmarking requirements. So here you can see a pretty map and the colors and what they stand for. And I'm just going to say a city decides to go down the pathway of requiring benchmarking. Usually it starts out on that green little dot. So benchmarking is required for public and commercial buildings. It might even do it more. It starts off like at the government side. So that's the basic. You have to input, usually through Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and we say monthly, and then you submit annually your energy or water, depending on the regulation. And then that's the next phase would usually be some benchmarking and additional actions. So that could be anything from like doing a retro commissioning or doing an energy audit. So again, those are kind of the next steps. And then you've got, the last one is the building performance standards, which several cities now, and states such as all of Colorado State, all of Washington State, you've got DC, Boston, and New York, and some others that now have those more stringent building performance standards. So again, here's that map that shows this is as of September 2023, about 45, and that is including of these, cities, states, municipalities have signed on saying that they're going to have a BEPS. So that's, when I say BEPS, it's building performance standards, in place by Earth Day of this year, which is literally a month away. So you can see the blue is those that have passed BEPS, or there's a policy or program in place. And then the lighter blue and the darker blue is that they are a participant of the National Building Performance Standard, which means that they will be passing something probably by this, I say April. We haven't seen all these come to fruition, so I'm sure there are going to be delays just like any other policy that is out there. So really, obviously, the key here is Boston. It has both. You've got one, your participant, but that you also have that benchmarking and your building performance standards. The original BERDO is, as you know, required buildings of 35,000 square feet or more, or 35 plus units if multifamily, to report on your energy and water use. If you did not meet that minimum energy performance standards, then you required some type of energy action. Then also, annual benchmarking is still required. So it's still inputting that energy and water to be reported. Both, you can see the requirements for commercial and then residential, and then any parcel with multiple buildings. You self-certify every year, so you submit it, and then every 5 years, so in 2022, third-party verification was required. So that's usually like a licensed PE or someone who is certified in being able to do this. So starting next year, the GHG limits are now brought into that BEPS. So you must meet annual GHG emissions limits based on this building use. So let's take, for example, an office. Your emissions standards, or what is the limits, is 5.3. And you can see here the different cycles. So step towards compliance, one, the most obvious, and the one that we suggest depending on where people fall, is to do what you can to reduce your energy usage and greenhouse gas emissions on site. So what you first do is you can complete those GHG calculations through the current BERDO language. There are a lot of calculators out there. Also, if it's something that you need some more support on, we have one as well. Feel free at the end to reach out to me. Also, there are lots of people in the Boston area who do the same thing, but you want to know where you stand, and look, you are probably then going to conduct an energy audit, in which whomever comes on site is going to look at ways in which you can reduce your energy consumption and hit that limit by 2025 by any first probably low or no cost energy consumption measures that you can implement right off the bat, and then looking at potential capital planning and strategies for going forward. Then other steps towards compliance, obviously switching to renewable energy sources, if that makes sense. Again, our probably biggest suggestion would be, know where you stand, seeing what you can do on site first. That's like the low hanging fruit, no low cost to get you into compliance before you automatically switch. And then the other option is to make alternative compliance payments. You can see here what it looks like. It's about $234 per metric ton of CO2 emissions. The pricing is being updated and reviewed every 5 years. So while it's $234 for this coming cycle, it probably will be different going forward. Want to just do a quick, this isn't necessarily BERDO related, but it just shows an example of an energy audit in conjunction with LEED that our team did in the Boston area. So 280 State Street, you're probably all familiar with that or have seen it at some point in your commute or time downtown. So again, right now, what we've been doing until probably this year, when we're looking at energy consumption and creating that baseline, we've been looking at pre-COVID only just because I would say from 2020 to 2022, or at least 2021 was a little wonky in energy use and didn't necessarily tell the whole story. So our team there looked at we did an energy audit, and then by our implementing of low and no cost, we were able to increase the the Energy Star score from a 71 to a 78 over that 2-year period. So you can kind of just see here the energy use per month and the trend that, of 2022. 2020, excuse me. And then it helped get the building achieved LEED Gold based on this. Again, LEED, obviously, as some of you may be familiar with, doesn't just focus on energy. So there are other the strategies that we helped there for both water reduction. We did a waste audit and some education around reducing waste and diverting it from the landfill. Heavy emphasis on alternative communications, alternative transportation, and then indoor air quality. Okay, so moving on. So success through partnerships. Last poll. So now we're going to just transition into how we can have more success really on some of these ESG initiatives and getting them implemented and working through them at the property level. So feel free to type in the chat or go off mute your answer to poll number 3. Okay, well, I might take that as okay, sorry, there was a delay, excuse me. Okay, some clauses. And I would say if that is very common. Most owners and/or third-party management, we're seeing there are some clauses that people are starting to put in as lease negotiations are happening. And to be honest, most of that, especially like if you're in the Boston area or other areas that have benchmarking requirements, it's around access to data because that's really the hardest to obtain. So perfect. So someone asked, what is a green lease? So green leases really are created as, we would say, that collaboration agreement with owners and tenants. And they make sure there's, equity aligned with both the cost and benefits of both efficiency when it comes to water or energy as you improve and make investments on both parties. Again, we're looking at these. Here's really the key parameters of a green lease. It outlines the priorities for both parties. So it could be, we want access to the data. It could be, okay, if you're going to build out your space, we would like you to use more of a, like a green lens as you are doing construction management, or here are some policies we have in place. So we'd like you to work with your vendors on some of our pest management or janitorial sometimes. So it also establishes like a point of contact of who you should be reaching out with within the space when it comes to any sustainability questions. And then it enables, like I said, ability to report progress. So are we looking at different data? Are we looking at trends where we're doing well, where we're not, where there's room for improvement? Some recommendations that we suggest is, like I said, are there efficiency fit out standards that require, again, that sustainability lens? Data transparency. Again, one of the biggest things is a occupier or a tenant wants to know, okay, what are you going to do with this data? Again, at the end of the day, the landlord is probably just reporting it for BERDO to remain in compliance, but making sure that that's clearly communicated. And then obviously, especially being in Boston, if there are any building performance responsibilities between the landlord and tenant, you want to make sure that those are properly called out and aligned with in a green lease. If you are enacting green leases, there is something that called the Green Lease Leaders, and it's something, it spotlights owners, tenants, brokers, anyone on the real estate team that puts into green lease standards. Again, for someone, I'm just reading the chat now. The trying to retro after is a nightmare. So yes. For those who want more resources, I'm going to jump to the next slide or the more resources slide. There is Green Lease Leaders Resource Library. Those have lots of clauses and recommendations, depending on your property and what sector you're in, of things you can implement and put into lease negotiations and conversations. Going back. And then even, let's say you don't have green leases or clauses intact, but there are different things that you can do at the property level to prioritize sustainability. So obviously green lease clauses is one, depending on where you sit within the organization, looking at ways in which you can reduce your water usage. You can look at reducing waste to landfill, composting programs, speaking to others that if you have other third-party management in your area or people who've gone through this before, sharing best practices, looking at ways in which you can electrify the building or reducing that embodied carbon during your fit outs. Again, if your owner or if the facility has those net zero goals, really I would say what can we do to help get our facility or property on that way to decarbonization. So one, looking at what those goals are, looking at what attributes to GHG emissions in the building, and then communicating those both internally to our team and ways in which we can operate the building more efficiently, but also getting that partnership with current and future tenants. Looking at different green building requirements. So that could be what's required by code. It could be like BERDO, or also if there's anything in retrofits, but for instance. Again, we would suggest also doing, if the building is in full operational standpoint, conducting that energy audit or net zero audit, or even just like a climate risk assessment to really know where you stand. You're creating a baseline, and then you're looking at ways in which you can implement and move forward on that pathway to decarbonization. So you're going to take the results of that audit and then implement them both short term and then midterm and then in capital. These are just some, again, I know, we're preaching a lot that we could do from like the facilities or the property management standpoint, but again, a large part of the energy or water or waste consumption really comes from those who occupy the building on a day-to-day. So these are just some suggestions and things that we've done with our properties, helpful tips and tricks. So I would suggest, if any of you manage properties or oversee, facility, again, it's if you've got a newsletter, or if there's different flyers that you send out, especially Earth Day is coming up next month, really just getting your tenants and occupiers on board. So we send these out quarterly, as you can see here, and each one focuses on something different, from energy, water, we've done waste, this is health and well-being, but trying to get, a lot of people on board, and just, I think we do a great job of being mindful of these initiatives at home, but it's also using them and being able to implement them at the office as well. So again, these are just suggestions that if you all want to take back to your company or your place of work, some ways in which you can really get others on board as well. So again, looking at how you can save energy both at home, but also transferring that to work. Here are some, I think the EPA, to be honest, put these out, and then we just rebranded them as Cushman, but they're cute digital posters about how you can, not drive to work, but maybe you take a bike. You can, reusing a mug, so getting rid of single-use plastic, turning off water, turning off your computer when it's not in use. So again, digital communication that you can put out to get others on board, and how we can all do our part. And that's really it. I know it saves some time for questions at the end, but wanted to see if anyone had any questions on anything we discussed, or just comments in general.
Rachel, I was going to ask one about the green leases.
Yes.
Who's driving, for that content and language in the leases? Is that like from the landlord trying to attract tenants, or vice versa, like the occupants of space and buildings? They want it from there, or is it kind of both?
I think it's both. I think we are seeing it both on the tenant side. If, let's say you work at, let's say you're Google, for instance, and you're moving into a building, and Google is reporting on their scope 1 and 2 emissions for their own sustainability report. They're going to want access to that data for their own internal tracking or corporate reporting. And then on the landlord side, we're also seeing, especially in those instances where you do sit in like a Boston per se. So the landlord's going to have to report on this for BERDO, or also the landlord may have their own net zero initiatives or their own corporate initiatives. And so I think we're seeing it on both sides. And that's really, it's like being able to come to the table when you're having these lease negotiations and understanding like what the reasoning is and why, you know, we're asking for this is probably how you get to come to some type of agreement.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
We
Ooh,
have a
Tony,
question in the chat too.
yep. In 154-year-old brownstone. Wow. I think I would say that's probably going to be a little bit more building specific and wanting to know what the, you know, building systems are and whatnot. But unfortunately, I will say, you know, like we said, Tony, is recommending what you can do, low, no cost, looking at what you can, what building systems are coming towards end of life and you can replace with something that might be more energy efficient. But again, unfortunately, if people have those carbon neutral, I think depending on what that date is, you're going to have to look at to kind of close that gap. What you can do on site and also probably purchase off site to offset.
Tony, I don't know how you guys get your electricity right now, so this may not be applicable, but there are companies that will look and negotiate electrical rates, and at the same time, they look at where you're getting your electricity from, and you can offset with green recs at the same time too. I know a few companies like that, so if you need reference, let me know, but it's a good place to start because it helps offset purchasing from like wind farms in Texas versus getting your electric local.
Yep.
I think we'll have to do that in the future because I do buy commodities right now going forward. Like I'm out 3 years right now. Because I see the electric going up and up and up. And my purchases went down, down over the next 3 years per kilowatt. So when that comes to an end, yeah, probably will have to do that. As far as the leases, I mean, none of the small companies are going to worry about the green lease. It's all the larger companies and their image. That's all it is.
100%. And what are you doing with it? Or on both sides, larger companies, as in we don't want to give you this data, and then larger companies, we need this data.
Yeah. I mean, I tell my kids all the time, recycling and conservation starts at the individual desk. If you don't have cooperation from the desk up, you can't do anything across the board.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that goes for anything. That's good.
Yeah.
At a previous company, we used to do like a sort your disposables day just because I'm sure we all face this. There's such high contamination levels in recycling. It typically, especially in cafeterias, doesn't always get recycled. And I literally had someone says like, oh, I don't believe in recycling. Like it was Santa Claus. Like, so some people just really don't care, and it is hard. That's the tough part.
A few years back, like 3 years ago, the waste company I was dealing with basically told me, he said the recycling and the trash all go together now because it costs just as much to get rid of recycling material as it does the regular waste. So they weren't even telling the end user. They were just getting rid of it and still charging the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely we see that across the board. And honestly, all we can do is just educate and re-educate people, and it'll stick with some. And I mean, this is not new to the sustainability world. I think you see
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's like you're a parent, even at work, you're walking around shutting off lights. I mean, it's just, you can only put in so many motion sensors in a place. But it's like, yeah, I'm chasing the kids around the house to shut off the lights. It's insane.
Yeah. And I say that all the time. I'm like, okay, it's when you see your energy bill at home, you're like, oh crap, I've got to make sure next month I've got to do better, and let me unplug a couple more things, or I'm going away, let me, turn off the air, heat, or whatever, adjust it. But we don't have that same kind of, that doesn't transfer to the office, which is unfortunate.
Maybe we need to start staring our utility invoices with our entire organization.
Yeah, this is you.
Do something.
Unless they get a piece of the savings, they don't care.
It does get to them eventually though, right? Though, if the company's saving money and it's a significant amount, that usually gets transitioned to employees, right? In some way, right? Like whether it's initiatives to make it a better workplace, or like to make the buildings better, or it's in pay, right? So in some way that's getting reinvested.
Yeah, I think it's
Good
just
stuff.
they don't see it immediately, that it's harder to make
This
that.
whole BERDO thing, I don't think they know what the hell they're doing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't think the city of Boston knows what they're doing. They would still change things, even after you did your initial reporting and got it certified, they were still making changes to it after after the information was due in.
Yeah.
So
true.
it's I don't know what I don't know what they're doing with that. I have no idea what they're going.
Yeah, I think it'll be a ever evolving landscape with all of.
They're gonna have to, because they have no clue. Well, I got a new letter from a new person in charge now. Director of Carbon Neutrality from the BERDO department. Oh, well.
Any other questions for people? I think we've got about 10 more minutes. If anyone's got questions, or happy, hand it back over to Gio or Ashley.
I do want to thank you for your time.
one
Oh,
quick
go
one.
ahead. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Especially in this larger buildings with a lot of different tenants. Sometimes the owners don't always share the information to the tenants so that they can report on their own. And I think it's not just a one-way street. It really is helpful if the owners or the property managers actually provide the correct and appropriate data, so that they then in turn can take either credit or blame, as the case might be, for those people that are, for the companies or that are leasing the property.
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful as well in some cases, because the power is either not segregated in such a way that it can be assigned to specific tenants. It's difficult for them to report, and then in turn for their leadership, so that they can either take, credit or address the needs that they have. So just something along that line is also needed.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that really honing on that like split incentive from both the owner and the tenant on, what can yield energy savings, and who's then benefiting from the reduction in energy costs. So I think it's definitely a partnership that hopefully we will see more come out of.
All I was going to say is thank you so much for your time. All of this stuff is so much, we can never cover everything in an hour. So definitely high level, and appreciate the insight and all the facets that exist in this world.
And
Thank you, Rachel.
Sorry,
No,
and I
thank
was going to say that I know that Phil Donahue had asked about slides, so these slides will be available. Rachel will be sending them to me, and I will send them out. And as Ashley just said, thank you, Rachel. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about this. It's an interesting topic, and it sounds like there's a lot more that we could get into at some point. And thank you to everyone else for joining in the discussion. Again, please let me know if you'd like to get more involved in Think Tank. And don't forget to check out our events calendar. IFMA's Facility Fusion is coming to Boston in May, and our chapter will be hosting a cocktail reception. It will be on Monday, May 6th, and you should all have received an email about that today. So I look forward to seeing you all at future events. Thank you.
Can you stay on for 1 second? Because I had to chat with you for a quick second.
Thanks,
Sure,
everybody.
let me just, I'm gonna end
Thanks.
the recording and then I will.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.
Bye.